Hello everyone, welcome back to Aryan tutorials on engineering mechanics. So here we are going to discuss about finding the resultant of a number of forces acting on a body. So that means here the resultant force will produce the same effect as the number of forces acting on a body. So here the problem is given like the two forces are acting at a point O as shown in figure. Determine the magnitude and direction of the resultant force. That means here the two forces are acting at a point O. Assume that point O is one of the points on the body. So we need to determine the resultant force of the two forces acting on the body here. So the figure is given like this. So here this corner point is O. So on this point the two forces are acting away from the point as P and Q. P is 50 newtons and Q is 100 newtons. And here the angle made by the P with horizontal line it is given as 15 degrees, and the angle made by the Q with respect to P is given as 30 degrees. So for these two forces we are going to find out the resultant force which can produce the same effect as the two forces acting at a point O. Okay, that means the resultant force will represent the two forces, okay, that can produce the same effect as the two forces acting on a body. So here for that we follow the parallelogram law of forces. So already we have discussed about the parallelogram law. So we by using this law, how can we find out the resultant force? Already the derivation part is explained in the previous lecture. So by using that formula, here we are going to find out the resultant force of two forces P and Q here. Here first we need to assume the two forces as two sides of the parallelogram. Here the two forces are P and Q. So we need to assume these two forces are the two sides of the parallelogram. Okay. And next, and here, so here we have assumed the two forces as two sides of parallelogram. So then the resultant will be the diagonal of the parallelogram. So the diagonal will represent the resultant of these two forces when we assume these two forces are the two sides of the parallelogram. So already we have discussed the formula will be the resultant force is given by the formula r square is equal to p square plus q square plus 2p cos alpha. So we need to substitute the values here. So according to the problem here, p is equal to 50 degrees and q is equal to 100 newtons and alpha is 30 degrees. Okay, so the alpha represents the angle between the two forces which we are assuming as two sides of the parallelogram. So we need to consider this 30 degrees only. Okay, now so the alpha is equal to 30 degrees. So now substitute the values in the given formula for finding the resultant force. So r square is equal to p square means here 50 square plus and q square means here 100 square plus 2pq cos alpha means 2 into 50 into 100 into cos 30 degrees. So by simplifying these values we can get the resultant force. So here r equal to we can write it as square root of same term 60 square plus 100 square plus 2pq, that is 2 into 50 into 100 into cos 30 degrees. So by simplification we'll get r is equal to square root of 21,160.25, and by taking the square root of this value we'll get r is equal to 145.46 newtons. That is the resultant force of the two forces P and Q which will produce the same effect as the two forces P and Q acting at a point O on a particular body. Okay, so that is the way of finding the resultant force of two forces by following the parallelogram law of forces. So next we try to find out the angle. So what is that? The resultant force, the diagonal means it can pass through the intersecting point of the two forces. Okay, now so that means from O only the resultant force will be getting as a diagonal of the parallelogram. So for this resultant force we can also find out the theta angle, that is angle made by the resultant force to the adjacent side, that is P force. Okay, now so this theta value can be determined by the formula theta is equal to tan inverse of q sine alpha by pq cos alpha. So for this one also a particular derivation part is there. So by taking tan theta is equal to we can derive the formula. So I didn't explain that, but please remember this formula theta is equal to tan inverse of q sine alpha by p plus q cos alpha. So again substitute the values in this formula equal to tan inverse of Q means 100 sine 30 degrees by 50 plus 100 cos 30 degrees. So by simplifying this equation, we'll get the theta value as 20.1 degrees. That means here the theta is the angle made by the resultant force with the adjacent side or adjacent force, that is P value. Okay now. So like this we can find out the resultant of two forces by following the parallelogram law of forces, and again we can also find out the angle made by the resultant force with its adjacent side, that is by the formula tan inverse of q sin alpha by p plus q cos alpha. So I hope you understand. If you still have any doubts, please feel free to give a comment to my video, and thanks for watching my video, and don't forget to subscribe my channel. Thank you all.